perspective is everything. And while you can take great pics while you're down on the ground, sometimes you need to go up into the sky to truly get some great photo ops. From stunning natural scenery to top-secret military installations, let's take a look at 15 cool satellite photos. Number 15. Trump surveillance tweet. Sometimes classified info is declassified, but in the case of this satellite picture, it went public not through a formal federal process, but through a tweet. Shared by former President Donald Trump in August of 2019, it shows a high-quality picture of a seriously damaged Iranian space facility, with the caption, "The United States of America was not involved in the catastrophic accident during final launch preparations for the space launch vehicle at Semnan Launch Site 1 in Iran. I wish Iran best wishes and good luck in determining what happened at Site 1." Now, many experts said Trump should have not shared the image, as it not only shows the world the type of surveillance pictures American technology is capable of taking, but also allows adversaries such as China and Russia to get access to a high-quality photo that they could use to further their own intelligence. Therefore, while many were happy to see the tweet, it probably wasn't the best thing to share publicly. Number 14. California wildfires. California is known for having a lot of wildfires, but in September of 2020 things got so out of hand that satellites were able to pick up on the massive amounts of smoke all the way up in outer space. You see, while climate scientists anticipated that wildfires in the region would become more intense over time, what they didn't expect was for a lightning storm to essentially trigger one of the worst conflagrations in decades. Consisting of about 9,600 individual fires, the event destroyed almost 1.8 million hectares of land, destroyed about 10,000 buildings, and cost more than $12 billion in damages, making it the third most destructive wildfire in California's history. So the fact that massive amounts of smoke were recorded by satellite was not all that surprising. Number 13. A solar eclipse. Total solar eclipses are exceptionally rare, yet we on Earth get an exceptionally beautiful picture of one when Geostationary Operational Environment Satellite 16 captured it from outer space. Occurring on December 14th of 2020 over the skies of southern Argentina and Chile, the width of the eclipse or path of totality was roughly 90 kilometers wide. And for those looking at the picture on screen, it's essentially the massive blackish-brown swirl you see at the bottom of the globe. And while this eclipse was too remote for most people to see on land, this satellite image from above is arguably just as beautiful. Number 12. Hamad. Some people really do like to show off, but Sheikh Hamad bin Hamdan Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi took things to a whole new level back in 2009. That's because he commissioned a 3.2 kilometer long by 0.8 kilometer high spelling of his name, Hamad, to be etched into the desert. In order to keep his name intact, he made the letters large enough to form waterways that absorb the encroaching tide. And as a result of this, the letters are still visible from outer space today. Number 11. Barcelona. Few cities are as well loved as Barcelona. After all, not only is it one of Spain's largest cities, but it's full of cultural heritage, beautiful landscapes, and historic sites, making it a favorite destination for everyone from 20-something backpackers to seniors on cruises. However, as it turns out, the views of the city from space are just as beautiful. That's because unlike many cities, Barcelona is arranged in a series of squares and rectangles with curved edges, and the bright oranges, reds, and greens from the building really make the city pop. So while seeing the city from the ground may be the most popular method of visiting, seeing the city from above is a real treat as well. Number 10. The Nazca Lines. While there are many ancient carvings out there, few are quite as extensive as the Nazca Lines. That's because these designs, which are located on the Peruvian coastal plain about 400 kilometers south of Lima, Peru, span an incredible length of over 1,300 kilometers and an area of about 50 square kilometers. Made about 2,000 years ago, they're large, elaborate etchings of zoomorphic designs such as birds, fish, lizards, dogs, trees, flowers, and humans, with the majority being etched into the rock at a depth of between 10 to 15 centimeters. Now, what is perhaps most fascinating about them is that they can only be fully seen by air, which is odd considering the indigenous people who made them would have had no means to be able to fly over the images in order to see them. The satellite images of the Nazca Lines are pretty awesome, as they are quite clear even from the far reaches of outer space. and despite there being wild speculation as to what their purpose was, it appears that they most likely had some sort of astronomical or religious significance, with the idea being that they were made so they could be seen by deities located in the sky. Regardless, despite all of the hypotheses out there, no one is 100% sure as to what they were really used for. Number 9. Solway Firth. Typically speaking, the area where a river meets an ocean or sea is nothing spectacular. But at Solway Firth, satellite imagery captured a truly amazing sight. Located off the southwest coast of Scotland at the time of the picture's capture on October 2nd of 2019, the waters along the coast were rich with sediment such as sand and silt, and organic matter such as plants, soils, and planktons. This murky combination led to the water off the Scottish coast being a brownish color, but as the water emptied into the deeper water of the Irish Sea, the color completely changed to a deep blue. While it was this natural phenomenon that led to the beautiful satellite picture, we do have to admit that there was some artistic redesigning. That's because instead of keeping the picture exactly the same, Norman Curring of NASA's Ocean Biology Group used several software programs and color filtering techniques to draw out the fine details in the water. Now, while the swirls and streamers in Solway Firth are real, Curring separated and enhanced certain shades and tones in the data to make the sediments and dissolved organic matter stand out. But we'd say this enhanced photo is even more beautiful than the original.
We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button.
Number 8. The wake of Tropical Cyclone Idai. Cyclones are some of the worst storms imaginable, and they can destroy homes, damage infrastructure, and create widespread destruction. And while these storms are often associated with both the Caribbean and Southeast Asia, in 2019 Cyclone Idai went against this conception when it struck off the coast of Southeast Africa. Considered to be one of the deadliest storms to ever strike down in the southern hemisphere, it caused catastrophic flooding and landslides along with hundreds of casualties across Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. Now, in this satellite image taken after the incident, we can see the extent of the damage inflicted on the city of Beira's electrical grid. That's because despite the fact that the grid covers almost the entirety of the area shown in the image, only the city's southwest corner still had any electricity, and with the blackened areas being parts that had their electricity absolutely wiped out. And while this image may be a bit depressing, the good news is that it was also quite helpful, as it's these type of images that can aid emergency responders in finding where to best implement efforts to restore electricity to a given region. So while this image may not be one that shows absolute destruction, we're happy to report that the city is in much better shape today. Number 7. Noctilucent Clouds. While cloudy days usually aren't all that impressive, these noctilucent clouds that formed over the North Pole are nothing if not incredible. Taken on June 12 of 2019, this satellite picture depicts the unusual streaks of clouds that form high in the atmosphere around sunset at the world's highest latitudes. These clouds typically only form in the spring and early summer and are known as noctilucent or night shining because they appear in the twilight hour before sundown. Now, in order to create the incredible image seen here, the NASA scientists involved use an instrument that measures albedo, or in other words, the amount of sunlight reflected back into space from the Earth. In this picture, noctilucent clouds appear in various shades of light blue to white depending on the density of ice particles in the air. And in order to create an accurate image, the picture had to be stitched together from several different satellite passes. Thus, while it certainly took some effort to create this image, we'd say that it was definitely worth it. As an interesting side note, it's worth mentioning that these noctilucent clouds have actually been appearing at lower latitudes over the past few years. The reason behind this seemed to be that the atmosphere has been altered thanks to climate change. There's now more water vapor than there was previously. So as the Earth continues to warm, these clouds may start becoming a mainstay far south of the North Pole. Number 6. Ili River Delta. While icy lakes and deserts aren't two things that often go together, in southeast Kazakhstan's Ili River Delta, you can see both at the same time. When taken from space, a satellite picture of the area shows a stark contrast between an icy river oasis and the desert around it. Such an occurrence was possible because when the picture was taken on March 7th of 2020, the delta was just starting to emerge from cold winter temperatures, and thus Lake Balkhash's ice was breaking up, revealing swirls of sediment in the shallow, sandy bed of the western part of the lake. Interestingly, it turns out that while this scene is only seasonal, The oasis itself is extremely important year-round, as it's not only home to hundreds of animals and plant species, but also a number of rare ones, including the Caspian tiger and the goitered gazelle. And there have been some discussions about potentially introducing new animals into the area due to its ecological success, with these including the Siberian tiger and the Bactrian deer. So we'd say that the area is of significance due to both its beauty and ecological importance. Number 5. Mapvertising. You've seen ads on billboards, televisions, and YouTube videos, but did you know that there are even some on Google Maps? Known as mapvertisements, these are essentially massive ads that are so large that they can only be seen from outer space. While ReadyMix was technically the first company to have a logo visible from space after they created one in 1965, in 2006 KFC caused a media flurry when they made their first mapvertisement. In order to accomplish this feat, KFC used a total of 65,000 one-foot square tiles that were laid out in Nevada's Mojave Desert near the town of Rachel, with the entire process taking about 6 days. It was made as part of a wider project to reinvigorate the brand's imaging, and while you may not currently be craving any of the Colonel's chicken at the moment, we suggest looking for the logo next time you're on Google Earth. However, it turns out that KFC isn't the only big brand to have a logo that can be seen high in the sky. Another famous example is Coca-Cola, who in 1986 constructed a massive Coca-Cola logo in the desert near Arica, Chile. Measuring in at the length of a football field, it was originally built to commemorate Coca-Cola's 100th anniversary. And in 2011, it even got a facelift in order to officially mark the soft drink's 125th year on the market. Yet there are some mapvertisements that are only meant to be temporary. Such was the case in 2006 when the famous magazine Maxim heated up the Mojave Desert with a magazine cover featuring Eva Longoria. Taking a crew of 9 workers 15 hours to secure, it was made of a vinyl mesh material that measured in at 75 by 110 feet. However, it was taken down by Maxim before it could be photographed by Google Earth, so unfortunately you won't be able to find it for yourself. Number 4. The Uyghur concentration camps. China has been systematically destroying Uyghur society through both a cultural and literal genocide for years, but it's been only recently that satellite images of the camps have become publicly available. For those of you who don't know, the Uyghur Muslims are an ethnic group that primarily lives in the northwestern province of Xinjiang, with a total of 12.8 million Uyghurs being the Chinese government's official figure. For years, Xinjiang was considered to be an autonomous region of China that, in reality, only had a very marginal amount of increased autonomy when compared to other regions. But ever since 2014, the Chinese government has tried to assimilate the area's Uyghur minority group into the Han majority. This first began with ramping up police surveillance in the area under the guise that it would help prevent religious extremism. But what this really meant was the regulation of banning Muslim practices such as growing a beard, having a prayer rug, or quitting smoking and drinking. This eventually increased into the introduction of the so-called re-education camps, with the claim being that these are supposed to de-radicalize these ethnic Uyghurs. However, the reality is these camps are simply propaganda machines for the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. And typically speaking, detainees have to spend time doing things such as singing hymns, praising the CCP, writing self-criticism essays, and being subjected to physical and verbal abuse. Beyond indoctrination, the prisoners are also forced to work as slave laborers on local cotton farms, which has led to a massive international boycott of companies that use the Xinjiang cotton. And when you further consider that more than 1 million people may be imprisoned at these camps, it becomes clear that they're a massive problem. Now, the Chinese government has been both denying and mitigating the true nature of these camps for years, but satellite footage shows that they not only exist, but have several disturbing features, such as fields for slave laborers to till or massive buildings for inmates to be imprisoned in. So with this satellite evidence in hand, we think it's clear that a genocide is not only happening, but that it shouldn't be ignored. Number 3. North Korean prisoner camps. Turns out that the CCP isn't the only government body that's running concentration camps, as North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un is also known to have his own set of camps in which to torture prisoners. Found across North Korea, there are believed to be at least 4 political prisoner camps and 14 re-education camps, with both serving different purposes. The political prisons are the more severe of the two and are reserved for those accused of either political offenses or political unreliability. In the past, these prisoners would have 3 generations of their family interned with them as part of the alleged family responsibility principle. And while this has virtually been abandoned today, these prisons still are absolutely brutal. That's because prisoners are used as slave laborers in the agricultural and mining sectors and are housed in horrible conditions and are given meager rations that keep them on the brink of starvation. As such, about 40% of the prisoners eventually die of malnutrition, while an unknown number dies of ailments such as illness, accident, and frostbite. Generally speaking, political prisoners are kept in the prison for life, and as a result, their existence becomes absolutely miserable. When we look at the satellite images of Camp Number 25, we see there are not only mines and agricultural areas on site, but a crematorium to do away with the dead bodies and walled compounds to keep prisoners in. When it comes to re-education camps, the conditions are supposedly a little bit better, and the prison terms typically aren't for life. However, considering that North Korea has a horrible human rights record, we'd still stay as far away from the North Korean prison system as possible. Number 2. Area 51. Of all the entries on this list, none are quite as famous as Area 51. After all, it's been the subject of countless conspiracy theories over the years, with many believing that it's perhaps the site of some real-life aliens. Now, these theories first began in the 1950s, when the United States government began using the Nevada-based compound to test out some of its newest aircraft. Due to both Area 51 and the surrounding testing area it encompasses being about the size of Connecticut, it gave testers a lot of land to work with these new bombers and jet fighters, and it was while these strange planes were flying that people began to get suspicious. After all, the aircraft had often very weird shapes and looked a lot like a UFO might. So therefore, rather than just tell people that the aircraft were not UFOs, the US government supposedly played along with these suspicions in order to distract from the real purpose of the base. What is this real purpose, though? Well, unfortunately for us, this is classified information. However, what does seem to be apparent is that the base is still in use, and that while it essentially served as a secret air base throughout the Cold War, its use today is a lot more secretive. In terms of the current satellite images, they also don't tell us very much. While it's clear that the compound is quite large, there's not much info as to what's located there. And all of the more in-depth satellite pictures tend to be on the blurry side. Therefore, we may never know exactly what the base is currently used for. And as an interesting side note, despite being a secret military base, Area 51 was almost invaded by civilians. In July of 2019, more than 2 million people responded to a Facebook post asking people to storm Area 51. And while the whole thing was supposed to be a joke, the United States Air Force took it a little more seriously, with Air Force spokeswoman Laura McAndrews warning the public that, quote, "The U.S. Air Force always stands ready to protect America and its assets," end quote. However, due to the fact that almost no one actually took this seriously, only about 1,500 to 3,000 people actually ended up showing up to rural Nevada, with only a handful actually making the foolish mistake of trying to enter the compound. So, the security threat of this event ended up being a lot less serious than it could have been. Number 1. The Great Bahama Bank. The Bahamas is one of the most well-loved vacation destinations out there. After all, not only are there plenty of sandy beaches, but also a host of world-class resorts and amazing island attractions. However, one part of the country that's truly underappreciated is the Great Bahama Bank, which is a series of carbonate platforms that take up most of the Bahamas archipelago. Now, the bank was dry land during the past ice ages, but as sea levels rose, it slowly became covered by water to the point that it's now between 2 and 25 meters deep, depending on where you are. The bank itself is a combination of both white carbonate sand and limestone derived from the skeletal fragments of corals, and as seen in this satellite image taken by NASA, the constant underwater currents that the bank is subjected to have given it a wave-shaped rippled pattern. And thanks to the sand and seagrass being present at varying depths, the image sports a range of blues and greens, making it truly beautiful to look at. Now, what's interesting about this image is that it's far more than just a pretty picture. That's because it was taken as part of a satellite program that has the goal of tracking the world's oceans. The idea is that a special set of satellites will be able to map and monitor the world's coral reef systems, which will allow marine scientists to use satellite images and maps in tandem with sea surface temperature data to identify areas that may be at risk of coral bleaching, rising water levels, and other environmental impacts. Therefore, we hope that NASA continues to take these beautiful yet useful pictures far into the future.
Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.